Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week edition of the program, we'll be focusing on activities of the 111th ILO conference happening here in Geneva, Switzerland. We also have other news stories for you. We will be right back. Following the Naira exchange rate unification by the federal government of Nigeria, several reactions has continued to trail this development at the 111th International Labour Organization Conference. Organized private sector and organized labor spoke about this development.
It has affected us from all ends. A situation where you create billionaires a day without doing a job. A situation where someone goes to CBN, he gets allocation of $10 million at 450, then he simply cross over to another window and at once go to parallel market and make a difference of 300 to 400 naira per every dollar. By the time you do the calculation, you could see how much such person is going home with.
It will make available more dollar over time, and then the forces of demand and supply would always determine what the rate should be. So we appreciate what has happened. We're watching. The other thing for manufacturers and business leaders in Nigeria is the fact that now you can plan your business, you can plan your procurement, you can plan even your sales. You can decide on what is it that you want to do.
Nigeria has come under serious scrutiny at the ongoing International Labour Organization 111th session of the International Labour Conference for the continuous enslavement and utilization of children in forced and bonded labor and trafficked within, through and outside the country. Organized labor in Nigeria, who expressed this concern in its submission as workers' delegate, noted that labor is distraught with the legal and administrative systems that allow perpetrators, handlers, and sponsors to get away with very light sanctions.
This committee must encourage, support, and work with the Nigerian government with the inclusion of social partners to review and revamp existing pieces of legislation as a show of our commitment to being part of the solution to this endemic crisis. The Nigerian Labour Congress pledges to be a member of the Alliance 8.7 to be more active in the fight against all forms of child labour in Nigeria.
The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Labour spoke about government's intervention towards ending the scourge.
Nigeria is convinced that injustice and persistent inequality, where workers are subjected to unsafe, unhealthy, and unfair practices, does not inspire sustainable development. To address these, the National Policy on Occupational Safety and Health was revised to give full effect to government's intervention in this regard. We are currently updating our Future of Work report to align with the ILO Centenary Declaration, the Abidjan Declaration, as well as the fundamental principles and rights at work as amended.
In Nigeria, the NLC in particular, with the support of ILO, in exploring the challenge of children miners, the mining industry, illegal mining industry, thriving industry, where children have been majorly the victims and those hurt the most by this growing illicit industry. So we've done work in Zamfara, we've done in Ondo, trying to push through enlightenment, push through what you might call publicity pressure on parents, on communities, on folks in those areas generally, to realize the danger and then to pressurize for children to be in school rather than be out there being used in illegal mining operations. So clearly the discourse here has been quite eye-opening for us that on the need to do more, that there are various other areas that this is thriving, and therefore one is going back with a renewed vigor to try to do more for Nigerian children.
Child labor can mean a different thing to different people. But from where I come from, child labor is when a child is denied his childhood, when a child is denied his dignity, the right to go to school, the right to live as a child. Child labor is when you deny a child total growth, all that a child needs to grow, and then put such a child into doing jobs that are not for children. When you deny them, especially education. So what more can be done? I think the government needs to do more. We have a lot of children on the street, and it's not going to help the nation. If we know and if we believe that these children, if we want to build a better future tomorrow, these children need to be pulled out of the street. These children need to be put in school for our country to be a better place, for our nation to be a better place. These children have to be pulled out from this child labor and put in school and given a life. And that will determine the future of this nation.
The responsibility. It's unfortunate they are not doing it. In those years, we have labor inspectors that goes around, move around all the visiting all the factory, make sure that they don't employ the factories, they don't employ the underage. As at least anybody, the labor law says anybody that is below 18 years must not be employed in the factories.
This education should go viral, should go to all the parents. People should desist in engaging children in child labor, child trafficking, all this practice that can mar the quality of the children that we have in the future. So it's really worth it as we are celebrating the children today, and I hope everybody will have the kind of mentality that all the children should be given equal rights to have access to education so that our tomorrow can be better than today.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Comrade Joe Ajaero. He brings us up to speed on activities that happened during the 111th ILO conference in Geneva, Switzerland, while also emphasizing on the working people's expectations from the federal government. It's good to have you on the program. It's another ILO conference, and I think I'm privileged to be speaking with you. And like someone said recently, it's the first ILO that you'll be coming in as the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress. The intervention of government this year focused on child labor. So also the intervention of the Nigerian Labour Congress also focused on child labor. Why did Labour indict government towards the issue of child labor in the country? What more do you think needs to be done at this point to reduce the scourge to the barest minimum?
It's not for the purpose of making presentation at the ILO to say that Labour is indicting government. It's an obvious fact because there is a link between poverty and child labor, and clearly stated. The level of poverty of the parents affects the behavior and the way and rate at which you take care of the children. In Nigeria, persistently, the issue of poverty has been very, very critical. In a country where the country's National Bureau of Statistics described about 133 million people as being multidimensionally poor, you can imagine the level of and standard of living of children in that community. A country where workers' minimum wage is less than $50 in a month will go far to show you how the children are taken care of. A country where most governors don't pay even that minimum wage, where states like Imo State declare almost half of the workers there as ghost workers and they're not paid for about 3 years, you know what their children will turn to. The children in such situation and such environment will turn to breadwinners, and that's a fact. In these 133 million people that are multidimensionally poor, their children automatically becomes breadwinners, either through hawking or other sources of child labor. So you don't need to do any further studies to find out the link between child labor and poverty, the link between the status, social status, economic status of parents and the status of their children. In a country where equally there is no clear provision for children of certain age, where people come up to tell you that they are doing school feeding of children, and there's no statistics to show how many children that were fed at a certain period, even during the period of COVID, when children were supposed to be with their parents in the house. You still have reports that there was this incidence of, school feeding. So there's much that is to be desired in this respect. So it's true, more than even how we stated it, that Nigerian government have done little or in the issue of trying to bridge the incidence of child labor. In trying to do this, you must equally look at the issue of poverty because they are interlinked.
There are lots of reactions from different stakeholders towards the Democracy Day. For the Nigerian Labour Congress and organized labour, what more do you think that the federal government and relevant stakeholders, what more do you think they can do to ensure that Nigerian workers enjoy the dividend of democracy?
From 1993 to date, it's a period of about 30 years. And it's a long period. So if we are still talking of dividend of democracy now, and we have not noticed it or started feeling it from any sector specifically or averagely, then there is more to be desired. We have said much about June 12. June 12 is now a public holiday. Symbolically, June 12 is recognized. But to the extent it will impact on Nigerians and the dividend of democracy is what I cannot say here, economically, socially, politically. Politically, there has been elections upon elections. I don't know whether there is anyone that is better than the other. At every election, there will be criticism, there will be allegations of either the election not properly conducted, or poorly conducted, or rigged, and then the myriad of litigations that goes to the cause, is making some people to cast doubt on the type of sacrifice we made in the course of June 12 and democracy. So while we still hope that the most magnificent and magnanimous military dictatorship is worse than the most dictatorial democratic governance, the dividends are yet to reflect in terms of what goes into the pocket of the worker, what the students gets, what an average Nigeria gets in terms of infrastructure, electricity supply, water, road, education, and all whatnot. We are yet to feel this. Until then, we still hope that democracy is the best for the country.
So moving on to the next question, decent work is a global agenda for organized labor and even employers of labor in some instance. So, so far from the conversations that has been taking place at the ILO conference, would you say that the world and Africa and maybe Nigeria in particular have been meeting up with the goal of ensuring that decent work is being prioritized?
Decent work, to even the issue of recruitment of the underage by some militant groups, to be the men soldiers. Some of the underage are equally involved, in kidnapping cases where they are used, to equally transfer ransom from one place to the other. So decent work in Nigeria is still a mirage. Apart from very few, that are working in the public sector, organized public sector, that enjoys statutory flavor on their mode of work. Though with poor remuneration, a lot need to be done, especially with the influx of the informal sector. If we don't check it, the level of informal economy that we are having now, if there's no proper regulation in terms of decent work, Nigerians will be the worst for it.
By June 19th, Nigerian government and organized labor would reconvene to discuss about national issue, especially the issue of the removal of fuel subsidy. What should Nigerians and workers be expecting from organized private sector on that conversation?
I think there is an agreement, so to say, and that agreement will be given life by that date 19th we are talking about. And after that day, we will now know the next level moving forward. If you ask me, it was a kind of tentative agreement reached, and then we are supposed to go into the practical aspect of it, looking at the aspect of technical committees that work on the implementation of such agreement. But my own understanding is that that agreement is a clear template on how to solve a problem of subsidy and the increase in pump price of petroleum products, which has been a problem to this country for over 3 decades. If it is properly implemented, Nigerians will be happy, they will rejoice, and the government of the day will do thumbs up for bringing solution to this problem. But a deviation from that template, which came as a result of well thought out policy and analysis over the years on how to bring to an end the occurring decimal of increase in pump price of PMS and the issue of removal or non-removal of subsidy. Deviation from it may create another problem for the country. That policy that we introduce of CNG will bring some level of equilibrium. It will bring the issue of alternative. It will bring a balance. It will bring a balance in the sense that you have a PMS, you have a CNG, that people are left to choose from 2 of them, and that overpriced PMS and an underpriced or averagely priced CNG will bring you a kind of equilibrium and bring a balance, and provide choice, and which is the same market forces they were talking about. Market forces does not thrive when you have a single participant or a single product. Now is the time we are going to know whether the cabals in government, from one government to the other, will be able to stop this alternative. And if they do that, then problem for this country.
We also know that this conference is centered towards ensuring that social justice is achieved globally. What has been the intervention so far? What were the conversations that you were able to intercede during the 111th ILO conference?
Well, year in, year out, the application of standards, has to do, it affects so many countries. You can see it's not a Nigeria-specific issue. There are some violations, human rights violations, violation of trade union rights in some countries, especially when a country goes ahead, to ratify, an ILO convention, and goes ahead to violate it. And in most instances, this year's on a lot was said about Belarus, and then the violation of trade union rights, persecution of trade union leaders, and all that. So, like Nigeria, we can't, after, ratifying the Convention on Child Labor, and still you are not, up to the record in it. So what comes is that your name will be mentioned in a special paragraph, that you have not been meeting up. And then the issue of trade union violations, and there are a lot of them. The application of standard tries to do is to strike a balance, on how trade union rights, how conventions, are obeyed in breach. So that has been on in all minimum wage, act. In Nigeria, there are still areas of not, states like Imo, the way they applied it, states like Abia, states like Zamfara, and some other states. They keep on coming up, from meeting to meeting. So it has to be clearly, if you put your pen on paper that you have ratified this convention, you don't go back, violating it.
Finally, youth unemployment seems to be a big issue in the country at the moment. What do you think the government can do to ensure that youth that are unemployed are being taken?
Well, there's nothing you can do than providing jobs. Even when you provide unemployment benefits, even when you provide other social safety nets, there are temporary measures to the unemployed or the underemployed, clearly. So job creation, is very, very critical. On the issue of providing jobs, and social protection should not be a permanent measure where people will remain there. It's like, a kind of transitional provision or arrangement where people can relax there until they get something substantial. Now, if you don't create jobs and you don't create environment necessary for jobs to thrive, if you don't have good roads, if you don't have security, because no matter how your economy runs, if there is no security for investors, they will not be around. If you don't have proper energy sector, where you don't have power, to power your factories and companies, then it will be difficult for you to provide job. And job security is very, very important. So if you have proper job security, people will transit to the temporary measure, of enjoying all those social security, and then move to paid employment or move to employment. Or people who want to invest can go even into investment, because the environment is ripe. Because they can move their goods and services from one point to the other. Because they can power their generators, to facilitate production in their camps. So if all these things are not there, no matter the level of social protection you are taking, it will lead to a kind of saturation on the people that are in that bracket. So it should be such that people, okay, we are enjoying social security, you are paying me 20,000 every month unemployment benefit. If we are 50 in that bracket, the next month, if 30 of us gets job, it reduces it. So they keep on moving. I think those are the things that government should look at moving forward.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.